And now, Ilyas, representing a multinational corporation called Symantec. Let's hear what you want to say to startups, to micro companies. Please.
I was asked to rather, let's say, give some thoughts, some comments rather than the presentation. So obviously, we're not a startup. We are a software company. We employ 18,000 people around the world, some of them here in Estonia. We have more than 200 products in the market. We have a global supply chain. We are present globally. But in many ways, the challenges around intellectual property are very pertinent to us every day. An example that I was thinking is that whereas most people don't know Symantec, pretty much most people I talk to do know Norton, which is our most well-known consumer product. So immediately you see how, let's say, the value of a particular trademark may actually be more important than the value of the name of your company, just because that particular trademark, that particular piece of technology is in the market for decades. We are having a significant patent portfolio, software patent portfolio in our area, and we continue to expand that. At the same time, we're a very acquisitive company, so we always ask the question, what is it worth to protect? And we look at that also every time we're considering the acquisition of any company. And that is very much the case as well, because we will do acquisitions which are very much focused on niche technology markets, so the ability to protect intellectual property is very important. Clearly, and certainly in the sector in which we are, intellectual property and business models could have a huge value. And in that regard, intellectual property can be interesting both from an offensive as well as from a defensive standpoint, what portfolio you have. Obviously, our tendency would be to like, when one is looking at a company and one is looking at our own strategy, patents and trademarks, so really strong protection. At the same time, one must recognize that especially in, let's say, businesses like software, you will see trade secrets and you will see a lot of that. So always, and especially because we are a security company ourselves, questions like who has access to your intellectual property are key. I was here today for the Cyber Defense Conference, which is taking place a few kilometers away at the center of Tallinn. And one of the things that we don't very much discuss in events like this is the fact that actually good protection of intellectual property also means a lot of information security. Most people think that things like targeted attacks, attacks to steal intellectual property, attacks to steal confidential information are targeting large companies or are targeting governments. Our research has shown that actually 52% of those targeted attacks aims at SMBs, in small and medium businesses. In fact, in a company of less than 20 people, you will on average see 17% of those targeted attacks. Why? Because these companies have niche, have interest in intellectual property, but they're also staging ground for further attack capabilities. So bear that, let's say, in mind every time you're considering who do you connect to, who has access to your information. Obviously, a startup is going to have different priorities than what we do in terms of how it's going to address the question of intellectual property. What will it need to focus on protecting? In the information technology space, a key question is often the question of standards. So things like, do I have an open source or a proprietary model? That obviously will impact the intellectual property question. Am I in a regulated or in a certified market? In our case, we're in a regulated market, so the question of standards and access to that standards and to the associated intellectual property becomes strategic. How much access to APIs, so interfaces for the different programs to communicate with each other. So standardization and the links around intellectual property are also key, provided that you have actually captured the critical market mass that will basically allow you then to make those choices. Linked to the question of standards is also the question of route to market. So do I make available my products through e-commerce and I protect, let's say, the source code? Do I make them available through the App Store? Or do I have a completely open source software model and everybody can take it and modify the code? in the end, the choices that you will have to make will be dependent on things like what's your biggest market, what is the business model that you're driving, and also what is the level of maturity in your business. You will be very much also influenced by the geopolitical environment. A lot of people, for example, in our business are targeting very large jurisdictions with, let's say, very high number of population in the single law. So places like India, places like China, they will have different geopolitical conditions, things like localized IPR, for example, as opposed to the way business is done in Europe, which offers a big market, but at the same time, a very big level of complexity. So, in the whole discussion, however, and having listened to the previous colleague speaking, I would also stress with emphasis one thing. If your strategy is to grow, or if your strategy is acquisition-driven, in the end, you will have to address the intellectual property question one way or another. So dealing with the lawyers is not money wasted. You will have to do that simply because either you will get to the point whereby in order to attract further investment for growth, you will need to have and be able to show a clean slate on IPR, or because very simply you want to be bought out, and in which case the one who's buying you out would want to know and would want to have secure what he's buying. I think I'm out of time, so with those few remarks, any questions, please don't hesitate and come and talk to me.
Thank you, Ilyas. Yeah.
Let's have one question from the audience, because we are out of time, but let's do something.
Is there any questions from the audience?
So the first one who raises the hand gets the question. No. No questions.
No questions.
What do you mean? We just was talking, every panel was talking about IP and how you should protect or not protect it, and now you have no questions. Shame on you.
Actually, I have a question. After listening at your presentations, then it seems we as lawyers, are we really suffering paranoia? Saying that we have to protect everything. But I guess the point, in order to sum it up, the point is that no, we are not suffering paranoia, but we are suggesting you to take, into consideration the concrete case, the concrete industry you are active in, and this gives you the right answer whether to protect and what kind of IP types you must use in your business. If you are a solo founder, then working in a garage, then don't waste euros. Put your attention to your development of your product. But if there are several founders, then our recommendation is here. Face the law and collect later. This is our recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. At least I got some ideas and thinking to do at home about the ideas of IP protection. Thank you very much for the panel.